This is my first YouTube video, and I'm making it because I cannot find a video that explains how to change the power steering pump on a late 2015 Camaro LS. I'm not sure if it applies to the other Camaros made after 2015, but this Camaro was made in late 2015. I'm going to walk you through it since I already did it. But the first thing we did was take off the air cleaner box. Then we released the belt using a 1/2-inch drive. I just popped it off. Power steering pump was located right here. And the other video had them taking 3 bolts off through the pulley. In this Camaro, there's 3 bolts, and they are here. This one down here, which I have in, and then there's another one that is right here. Let's see if I can get down in there. Those are the 3 bolts. They have to come off to remove the power steering pump. Before I did that, I took the cap off of here and I used a little electric pump and or turkey baster, whatever you got, and I sucked as much fluid out of there as possible. I disconnected this from the bottom of the power steering pump and let the rest of it drain out into a cup and or jar. And then I disconnected the hose right here. And once you get those 3 bolts off, then the power steering pump will come away from the engine block. One of the videos I watched said they went to AutoZone and they let them rent for free a pulley puller or pulley remover. Our AutoZone wanted $30 for it, so I went to Harbor Freight and spent $19 and got this. This is the pulley already removed, but basically what I did was I took, this is GM, so I took this and I screwed it into here. And then I took this, which is already on there, and I screwed it onto that. And then I took this collar. You can see it. There's 2 different sides. This is the shallow side, that's the deep side. Bigger lip is what I mean, and I put it down in here like this on the bigger lip on both sides. Put it around there, got this all the way down on there to where the lip of this is up over the top of this. Then I put this collar on it, and I just started cranking away with a 1/2 inch here, and I put a 20 millimeter or 1 inch here. I used a 20 millimeter, which I have sitting right over here. Righty-tighty on this while holding this, and it came off. I obviously did that before I could get to this bolt. This is in the front. So I pulled the pulley while it was on the car. You can still, maybe if you're talented, get to the bolt underneath there. There's a way to get to it through the top and behind the pulley if you have a long enough wrench, but I did not. So I could have came in from the side over here like this and down, but I chose not to do that. I chose to pull it on the car. That way it's actually being held by something, because there's a lot of torque that you have to use to get it off. I used a cheater bar with a I used a cheater bar actually with this and a 1/2 inch socket on the end of this. And I just kept wrenching it down until slowly you could look behind here and see silver starting to show from where the dirt is. And eventually it just came off. And then the whole thing came off together. Then I took the bolts off. That's where one of them went. And then if you look up here, that's where the other one is, and this is where the other one is. Sometimes you have to pay a core charge on these. So they're gonna want the power steering pump back. Not always. We ordered ours online. $103 for an AC Delco. The reason why this one broke is because my son, he likes to do donuts, slamming the wheel back and forth from the left to the right, and then he limped home and acted like he didn't know what happened. So once you get it apart, you're gonna have to take off this bracket here. There's a star right there, another 10 millimeter right there. You're gonna have to take that off, and then you got these 3 other bolts, which I mistook for being originally part of the frame that I had to take out while I was on the car, which was a mistake. You don't have to take these out until you get it off. You take those out, and then you use this part of the frame and then this part of the frame, and you put your new power steering pump in, torque those down. As Vice Grip Garage Guy says, how much torque? All of it. Remember, you're dealing with aluminum, so you need to be careful about how much torque you actually put on it. Now, I'm not going to be here to reassemble it because this is my kid's car and I'm going to make him do it, but this is what you use when you put it back on. See the bottom of that spins around, thrust, washer, thrust bearing. That goes on. These are almost the same, they're just a little bit different length, but basically the next time when you do it on this Harbor Freight thingy, this goes into this the long way with the short end up, and this goes on here with this thrust bearing and washer flat. Just move it out of the way on here. Actually, let me do it again here, like that. Then you're pushing down on that with the lip of that, and instead of turning this, you're holding this and you're turning that righty-tighty while you hold that. The other way, when you took it off, you're holding this and you're turning this here in, which is also righty-tighty, but you're pushing this in and pulling it out with the collar. In this case, you're using the thrust bearing and you're pushing it in with the lock nut and holding the stub here with a 1/2 inch. So it's just a reversal process. The directions are obviously in Chinese because this was purchased from China Freight. So that's how it is. Now, when you go to put it back together, I would take this here. It's up to you guys how you do it, and stick it on here. You can feel it on the lip, and then I would tap it. One of the ways you can do that, and you can stick it on here evenly, or you could get one that's actually even bigger, go over the edge, and then just tap it lightly with a rubber mallet to get it started. It has to be started square. Then you use these pieces right here, like I already described. You're looking at it right here, and press it on there. Make sure you put a little grease on here. Help yourself out. Once you got it all back together, obviously this is still the old one, and the pulley's on, and this is on. These 2 bolts are on, 10 millimeter. That star bolt is on, all torqued down gently, and these things are on the bracket. All you got to do is take it back over to your car, make sure your belt's out of the way, and just reverse the process. I put the bolts back in there where I took them out because one of them is a different length, so that way I don't have to forget. I end up forgetting, so that's why I do it that way. Keep your stuff together. Don't be a soup sandwich, and you'll be able to put it back together quite easily. But if you start spreading your stuff all out, then you're going to turn yourself into a soup sandwich. That's 2 cans of soup and a piece of bread, or 1 piece of bread and 2 cans of soup, whatever you want to, however you like to make your soup sandwich. But once it's on there and it's torqued down, remember, look at here now. You got to be careful. You don't want to snap these bolts off. They weren't on there that tight. They came off quite easily, so don't be torquing on them too hard, and get them back on there. Then you can just reconnect this and put your hose back on here like it's supposed to be in the pump. I didn't take this off. I guess you could have, but there's no need to take that off, the reservoir. Then you can just pop your belt back over by getting down in there on that again and taking your 1/2-inch drive and releasing the tension again. Make sure you paid attention when you took the belt off. I kind of left it almost right where it was so that you didn't really have to figure out how to put it back on. But if you take it all the way off, then you're going to have to make sure it goes on exactly the way it came off. So you need to look at it, use your cell phone, take a picture of it. And check the condition of your belt, make sure it's not cracked. If it's cracked, go buy another one. And slip it back over the pulley after you release the tension, put the tension back on it. And then once the tension's back on it, go ahead and fill your reservoir up with fluid. Get yourself a big can of power steering fluid when you do this. Right here. If your car has a lot of miles on it, I would recommend putting power steering fluid in it and putting like a pint of this in it too. This will keep your power steering and your rack and pinion from leaking. This stuff is magic. It really is. It's magic. So you can replace, you know, a pint, 1/2 a pint, however you want to do it, of your power steering fluid with this. Is very goopy. But get a big can of power steering fluid and then do the following. By the way, let's see if I have it up here. You can get one of these pumps at China Freight. Hooks up to your battery post. Round it out to your frame. Turn the switch on. Stick one end of the hose in your waste bucket, the other end down in your power steering fluid reservoir, and suck the power steering fluid out. So we're pretending now. Pretend you got it all back together. It's like we talked about, reversing the process, getting those 3 bolts back in there, hooking up your hose, putting your belt around the pulley. Fill this up with power steering fluid just to start out with. What you're going to do is you're going to recycle the power steering fluid in here. You're going to get rid of all the nasty fluid. Get in your car, start it up, move your wheel back and forth, count to 15, get out. Use that pump or your turkey baster and take all the fluid out of that reservoir and put it in a waste tank. Fill it back up with clean power steering fluid and repeat that process over and over again until the fluid looks almost as clean as the brand new power steering fluid. That power steering fluid is going to obviously mix together, so you're going to have to do it maybe 2, 3, 4 times. Once you get it done and you got clean power steering fluid in there, you should be good to go. Then put your air cleaner back on and hook everything up. We have a cold air intake on this, so we took it out, so it looks a little different. But go ahead and get your air filter box back on and everything, hook everything back up, and you should be good to go. I hooked that pump up, by the way, right here, and I grounded it here to the air box cleaner bolt. Just turn it on, set it right up here or right over here, suck that power steering fluid right out of there. It's a lot easier than a turkey baster, in my opinion. And you can use that in multiple situations, including doing your brake fluid if you ever get around to that. You know, one of the things I like about these Camaros, they're like 323 horsepower. And you can get all kinds of stuff for them. Look at what he put on here. You put this spoiler, you put the rear window louvers on it. You can change the lights out. You can put a shifting ball on it. He darkened the headlights. And it's quite a fast car for being a base model. You know, it's not very fancy inside, obviously, but it's fun to drive. But if you're going to be one of those guys who goes out and does donuts and slams your left wheel left all the way to the left stop and all the way to the right stop, you're going to probably need to change your power steering pump at some point, sooner than later. Also, another caution. It's not a good idea to drive it with no power steering. There's nothing that's pushing the fluid through the rack and pinion, and there's a good chance that if you drive it like that and don't fix it, you're going to have a lot more things to fix in the rack and pinion and the power steering pump, which could go from an extremely cheap fix if you can do stuff yourself to an extremely expensive fix when you got to take it in to somebody to have it done.